And so we're going to be discussing that today. I do want to invite you if what I'm saying here does resonate. I do want to invite you to go visit the blog just because there's more things here visually um that I honestly say I lack the technical ability to do, but yeah. So this week I want to talk about when feelings take over because there's no language. And we're continuing on with this conversation about language, the necessity of having words, of having a language and having emotional literacy to go with that language. And so I want to start by saying for many of us, the problem has never been that we feel too much. The problem is that we feel deeply, that we feel intensely. And oftentimes it comes all at once without having been given a way to translate those feelings into anything that's usable. So when emotions arrive without language, they don't move through us like they're supposed to do. They settle in and take root. They make our inner landscape home. They make our nervous system home. They blur the edges between what we feel and who we are. And this is especially true with heavier emotions like anger, sadness, or fear. Those feelings, they have weight. They demand attention. And without a learned way to express them, they can begin to consume our internal landscape. Instead of experiencing an emotion, we become merged with it. We stop saying, I feel angry, and start living as if I am angry. And that distinction may seem subtle, but psychologically and neurologically, it's enormous. What often gets labeled as being too emotional is actually something much quieter and more structural. It's a lack of language. When there's no framework for naming what is happening inside us, the nervous system stays activated. The emotion has no outlet or completion. It simply loops. I like saying that it's like releasing a rubber ball into a sealed room. It just keeps bouncing with nowhere to go, with no way to release it. And here's the problem is the longer that it loops, the harder it becomes to step back and ask what the feeling is trying to communicate. This does not happen because people are incapable or unwilling. It just it happens because many of us were never taught that emotions are meant to be translated. So for those of us raised by parents who believed that strong emotions were disruptive, they were manipulative, or something to be punished, expression was often shut down long before understanding could form. And now I want you to think, how many times have you heard these phrases? Phrases like, I'll give you something to cry about, or when you were being sent away to calm down in your room without guidance, um, without anything to really help you in that moment. It taught us that feelings were problems to be contained, not messages to be understood. And as children, we learned quickly that the safest option was silence. And as adults, that silence often turns inward. So when emotions show up now, especially in moments of stress, conflict, or loss, we don't instinctively reach out. We don't instinctively go towards curiosity. We brace and we try to endure. Or for some of us, we drown. And this is why so many people feel lost inside their emotions. Not because the emotions are wrong, but because there is nothing standing between the feeling and the self. Without language to act as a buffer between the two, emotion becomes identity. And so this is where emotional literacy begins, not by eliminating emotion, but by creating enough distance so that we can listen to it. And so language creates space instead of suppression. And for many people, there's a resistance, and that resistance to naming emotions comes from the idea that naming something means that we take ownership of it. So we are often taught that to name something is to claim responsibility for it. If you say, I feel angry, then you're expected to control it or justify it or fix it. And if you name sadness, you risk being told to explain it, or somebody minimizes it, right? Oh, but your life is so good. This person over here has it so much worse. Okay? Or we get told to move past it. And instead of really looking at it with this curiosity, many people learn a quieter strategy. Don't name it at all. And the belief goes something like this: if I don't label it, then it isn't mine to deal with. If I don't put words to it, maybe it won't count, and maybe it won't demand anything of me. But here's where the logic breaks down. When an emotion goes unnamed, it does not stop existing. Ignoring a problem. When has ignoring a problem ever worked? Ignoring a problem has never made it disappear, and emotions are no different. Being unwilling or unable to label what we are feeling doesn't neutralize the emotion. It simply pushes it out of conscious awareness. And what we are often doing instead is suppressing it. Many of us were taught that this is the survival strategy. We learned early on that expressing emotion made things harder for the people around us, not easier. And so instead, what we did was we swallowed it and we stayed quiet. We learned to be fine. How many of you say that? How are you doing today? Oh, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm okay. We learned to be fine. And at least for a little while, that may have worked. But an emotion that is suppressed does not dissolve. It waits and builds through the body, and we see it. We see it through reactivity to everything: exhaustion, anxiety, burnout, and then physical symptoms, that upset stomach, that heartburn, that IBS. There's a root cause for that. The cost is silence. The cost of it all. That is the cost of it all. That is the cost of silence. And so when we do not give an emotion language, we don't gain control over it. We lose the opportunity to understand it, respond to it, and then care for it in a healthy way. The feeling remains present, but now it exists without context, without boundaries, and without support. Naming an emotion is not about making it bigger. It's about making it visible enough to work with. And that's important because it's the difference between carrying something blindly and holding it in your hands, where you can actually see what it's asking for. Okay. Naming an emotion is not about blame or self-judgment. It's not a moral claim. It's a regulatory act. It creates a relationship between you and the feeling instead of allowing the feeling to take over. Okay? It's instead of allowing that feeling to take over the entire internal landscape. And so language does not mean this is who I am. It means this is what's happening. And that distinction right there is what allows choice to return. Now, on the blog, I do have what is called the feelings wheel. And so I want you to go over and check that out because the feelings wheel will help you to maybe put some language to how you're feeling in case that's something that you are missing out on. But I want to say this here is no matter what you're feeling on that wheel, every emotion is valid. And this is something that I tell my teenager, um, I tell my clients, tell pretty much anybody who comes to me with emotion, right? Um, what I say is this: every emotion is valid. It's what we do with it that matters. Okay. And that sentence only works if choice exists. And choice only exists when we have language, when we have the words to say, this is what is happening to me. This is what is happening right now. This is how I am feeling. Okay, so take anger, for example. Anger is probably one of the easiest emotions to misdirect because it carries so much energy. When anger is unnamed, it kind of spills outward. It lashes out. It touches everything and everyone around us, often unintentionally. Um, Words become sharp, reactions become fast and sometimes mean, and damage happens before we even realize what we're responding to. So, anger in that state just feels explosive. But when anger's recognized, something can shift. That same energy doesn't disappear, but it becomes usable, right? Anger can become motivational. It can energize us towards corrective action, and it can clarify and protect our boundaries. It can point directly to what feels unjust, unsafe, or violated, and it can clearly state that this is not okay. The difference is not the anger itself. The difference is whether it is unnamed and running the show or if it's named and being worked with. The emotion is valid. It's what we do with it that matters. Grief moves differently, but the pattern is similar. When grief goes unrecognized, it often collapses inward. It pulls us away from others. It isolates us and draws us into the dark, into quiet spaces where everything feels heavy and lonely, and where connection feels impossible. Grief, left unnamed, can convince us that withdrawal is the only option. But when we recognize sadness, choice begins to reappear. We can still honor what is making us sad. We can still acknowledge the loss, the betrayal, and the ache of what is gone or what never was. But instead of disappearing into it, we can choose to connect. We can allow ourselves to be witnessed. We can bring our grief to the people we trust rather than letting it seal us off from them. Naming grief does not diminish it. It makes it more survivable. Fear offers another example because fear often keeps us frozen. It holds us back from experience. It keeps us in the same place, replaying the same patterns because movement feels too risky. And when fear remains unnamed, it often disguises itself as truth. I can't. It's not safe. Well, this is going to end badly. But when we recognize fear as fear rather than facts, um, it becomes an invitation to just pause and evaluate. Is this the situation? Is this situation actually the same as the one that taught me to be afraid? Or am I responding to an old script that no longer fits the present moment? Naming fear doesn't necessarily eliminate it, but it creates the possibility of bravery. It gives us the chance to respond instead of react. And even the more diffuse states, those I just feel bad states, like burnout, stress, exhaustion, that general sense of feeling bad, it becomes more workable when we give them language because without language, many of us default to extremes. We either keep pushing ourselves until we break, guilty, or we collapse inward and withdraw entirely. But when we can say, I'm feeling burned out, I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling exhausted, we can start asking what's causing it. What needs to be removed? What needs to change? What boundary has been crossed, ignored, or was never set at all? And here's the thing is none of that is possible without language. And so that's why naming matters so deeply, because when emotions remain vague and unspoken, they tend to loom over us like monsters in a dark room that look shadowy, threatening, and unpredictable. They feel as though they could jump out at any moment and tear us apart. But when we turn the light on and say, this is what you are, something changes. The monster doesn't vanish, it doesn't suddenly become harmless, but it becomes knowable. And this is where I return to the monster metaphor that I use so often. Um, Once named, the monster is no longer a faceless terror peering at us from the corner. It becomes more approachable, less threatening. Yeah, maybe it's still prickly. Maybe its quills are up, like a porcupine, trying to protect itself. But it's no longer unknowable. And when something is no longer unknowable, it no longer has absolute power over us. Language does not trap us inside our emotions. It frees us from being consumed by them. It allows us to step out of identification and into relationship. And from that place, choice becomes possible again. And so here's where I want to close. Emotions are here to help us, not hurt us. And again, on my blog, there's some wonderful references. I have three articles, two scientific articles, and one kind of blog style article that I want to encourage you to check out. But here's what I want to say is I want to close by coming back to something that often gets lost when we talk about emotions, especially the heavy ones. Every emotion serves a purpose, even the ones that feel bad and that we wish would go away. Emotions are not design flaws or inconveniences. They are not signs that something is wrong with us, even when those feelings become chronic. They exist because at a fundamental level, they help us survive, adapt, and respond to the world around us. Many of them are protective in nature. They're signals meant to interrupt autopilot and say, hey, pay attention. Something here matters. And there is a growing body of research, including work explored in Leonard Ladino's book, Emotional, that looks at emotions from an evolutionary perspective. And I'm not going to unpack the science in depth here because honestly, this is not the point of this space. But what matters is a core insight. Emotions evolved because they help us improve the situation we are in. They push us towards action when something is wrong, and they encourage us to continue behaviors that support connection, safety, and well being when things are right. So, happiness reinforces what nourishes us. It tells us this works. So, keep going, keep doing it. The heavier emotions do something different. Anger alerts us to injustice or violation. Fear tells us to pause and assess risk. Sadness and grief slow us down so we can process loss, change, or disconnection. Stress and exhaustion signal that something in our environment or in our expectations is unsustainable. In other words, emotions show up, especially the uncomfortable ones, because whatever is happening is significant enough to deserve our attention. It's an invitation to step back, reassess, and move into problem solving rather than collapse, suppression, or reactivity. And this is where language becomes so essential because when we can name what we're feeling, we create space between the emotion and our response. The space is where choice lives. That's where we stop being driven entirely by the feeling and start working with it instead. Not dismissing it, not indulging it endlessly, but listening long enough to understand what it's asking for. The takeaway here isn't that we should try to feel less, it's that we need better ways to relate to what we feel. Emotions are not here to control us, they're here to inform us. And when we give them language, we give ourselves the ability to respond with intention rather than impulse. And that's where healing starts and agency returns. That is where emotions can finally do the job they were meant to do. Thank you for joining me. Definitely go check out my blog on my website, which is Natasha Durand-Moulton. So it's all one word, no hyphen.com. The blog is The Wild and the Wise. I'll also be um, officially releasing my podcast today at 7 p.m. So you'll get every other week, you will get Substack letter, you'll get a new blog, and then you also get a podcast to listen to later on in the evening. So we are unrolling and unveiling a bunch of new and awesome things. So I hope to see you there. I'd love to see you in the comments. Love to see you on my future lives. And if you're interested in having conversations here with me on these topics, please reach out. Let me know. I would love to have you join me. I would love to have a little collaboration. But with that, that is it. It was great chatting with you all. I'll see you all next week.